Welcome to session number 19, where we will continue from our mention of schools in the last session. And speaking of our schools, let's talk a bit more about that subject. Our public school system should have consistency from state to state and should not be subjected to the whims and prejudices of each and every local school board. In addition, our public schools today need to be charged so that our best teachers are among the highest paid of professions. Changes need to be made to that effect. That would result in all the people best qualified for teaching to be standing in line to provide the best possible education for our country's children. Remember that these same children are the young individuals who will someday hold in their hands the future of this country and of the world. With reasonable planning and forethought, our public schools could and should be brought to the point where no parent would even consider sending their children to any other school than the nearest public school, because that would be where their children would receive the best education. That's not being done currently, and the people of this country should be demanding to know why. The previous administration of George W. Bush was talking about providing big funding for education, just as they promised to do before the election of 2004. Nevertheless, the fact of the matter is that they, over the years, did not fund the school systems to the needed levels, and instead they seem to have more of a tendency to cut the funding for public education and numerous other programs in order to provide tax cuts, which gave the most benefit to the most affluent and wealthy among us, so they can continue to send their children to the very best of the private schools. The people of this country should have insisted that they be told why, and they should have also insisted on appropriate change to correct that situation. The current administration, elected in 2008, appears to want to improve these problems that the public schools face, and to do so in a significant way. We shall watch to see what actually happens. The previous administration, elected in 2000 and again in 2004, brought the country to its knees financially in 2008 through greed combined with a lack of oversight and a lack of regulation. So there appears to be very little left in the way of funding for the current public school system, or for anything else for that matter. The people rightfully want jobs for themselves and very good schools for their children, as well as a number of other sorely needed improvements to infrastructure and for a more green economy. But they seem not to understand the depth of the financial hole that we as a country were in at the end of 2008 or 2008. Nor do they see that every time the current administration works to get us out of that deep hole, their efforts are skillfully sabotaged by the opposition to make certain that there will be no success. There are people in this country who do not want that president to succeed. That should be obvious to everyone by now. We all know also that as a result of the financial crisis of 2008, the people in this country have lost their jobs by the millions. And although the situation is now improving somewhat, under the Obama administration, these jobs are still not coming back at the rate needed or hoped for. We are now told that the corporations in the United States are sitting on more than $1 trillion in profits, perhaps even $2 trillion, that they won't spend yet because they are, quote, uncertain about the future tax policies, the regulatory policies in the country, end quote. Perhaps it might be more accurate to state that these corporations are trying to extort even more from the new administration by implying that if they get the tax policies and the regulatory structure that they, the corporations and their leadership, want, then they'll stop holding the country hostage and begin hiring to help create more demand for goods and therefore more profits for themselves, while providing jobs for the unemployed. Perhaps then the conservatives in Congress will allow some of the president's legislative priorities and pending appointees to be approved, but don't hold your breath on these latter. Given the fact that the corporations are sitting on the money and will likely continue to do so until they get what they want, and given the kind of jobs which were created during the Clinton and the following Bush administrations, it leaves us with the conclusion that when or if the jobs do return, they're more likely than ever to be temporary or part-time and or without full benefits or a real living wage. The people of this country should be demanding to know why that they didn't receive and have not received the same consideration as the banking and investment institutions who brought the country down in the first place and who were then given hundreds of billions of dollars with no strings and no conditions attached. In addition, no adequate arrangements are being made to retrain those segments of the working population whose jobs are not likely to return. These people should be retrained in upcoming industry and technology, and they should have child care provided, as we've indicated before, that will allow them to take advantage of the retraining that must be made available. This needs to be done and is not yet being done, and the people of this country need to demand to know why. Insisting that needed funds continue to be lost because conservatives within the government will not agree to allow the ultra-wealthy to pay even their fair share in taxes is an insult to every working family in the country and around the world who willingly pay their taxes because they feel privileged to have a job that brings income into their home. Let's also look at another problem that needs to be addressed and solved. There are people in America who may see things from a somewhat different point of view, who may not see everything in the same way as those in the mainstream of our country. There are people here also whose religion or culture may not be the same as those of mainstream America. There are people who may not see the same color skin as you do when looking into a mirror. Far too often, too many people like those just described are being looked at, thought about, dealt with, or even openly discriminated against in ways that are not the right ways for us as Americans to act. We should consider the importance of and be grateful for the diversity that helps make us the great nation that we are. Doing otherwise is not the American way, and the people, once again, must seek to understand why such things are still happening in this country even today. These questions are very troubling to me, and they should be to all Americans. I so far still believe that President Obama understands the needs of the people and knows what needs to be done. However, I believe that he also sees that the current system under which we live will not allow the level of change that's needed, and that if he tries to go too far, he'll be unable to stay around long enough to make the needed changes that the current system will allow, especially with everyone on the opposition trying to make certain that he's a one-term president. In addition, I, the Speaker, was told by a source that I consider to be reliable that when President Clinton was first elected, before his inauguration, he was told the facts of life by representatives of the Business Roundtable, a group of 100 or so CEOs of the major corporations. They told him that if he, meaning Clinton, didn't, in essence, toe the line suggested by the Business Roundtable, that they would destroy his presidency. Although I'm certain that Bill Clinton would deny all of this, you may remember that although he ran as a progressive, he basically governed as a moderate Republican. Who knows how Jimmy Carter would have reacted to such a conversation, and look what happened to his presidency. Do you believe for a minute that such people as these did not have the same kind of talk with President-elect Obama before he was inaugurated? Don't be naive. If they have these talks with the President-elect, why should we not accept the idea that they have the same discussion or a similar one with those from Congress, especially from those who are not conservatives? Are you beginning to get the idea that the deck is stacked against working families? These are not the only tactics that are being used. Sadly, there are also many who have been made frightened of President Obama and his policies. This has been done by those who have a vested interest in the status quo. Those in the corporate structure are the very wealthy and the very wealthy who are so heavily invested in its success. As indicated previously, those who want to change things for the better and who begin to be effective are always discredited, scandalized, or otherwise neutralized in order to prevent change. How very sad. The people should be demanding to know why the current system will not allow the significant changes that are needed. We can only hope that the future will bring the level of change that is truly needed by the people. You now need to pay much more attention to which politicians promote policies that help the average working family and which politicians promote policies that help the corporate structure and the very wealthy, who are so heavily invested in the success and high profits of the corporate structure. Please remember also that politicians from both sides take money from the corporations and the wealthy. So how can we realistically expect from these politicians any legislation that truly helps the average working families or the needy? I want to thank you for watching. There's a lot of important information in this, and you may want to watch it again. In session 20, we'll continue our consideration of these very important areas of concern. Thank you again for watching.